You're listening to Financial Advisor Marketing, the best show on the planet for financial advisors who want to get more clients without all the stress. You're about to get the real scoop on everything from lead generation to closing the deal. James is the founder of theadvisorcoach.com, where you can find an entire suite of products designed to help financial advisors grow their businesses more rapidly than ever before. Now, here is your host, James Pollard.
Welcome to Financial Advisor Marketing. Another week, another episode. And this week, I am very excited for the episode because this guest has been requested by some of the listeners. And I must admit, I have been following his work for years, and we can talk a little bit about that. If you're in the financial services space, you've probably seen or heard the name Bob Burg come up again and again. That's because he is a Hall of Fame speaker, a best-selling co-author of the Go Giver book series, which is an amazing series, by the way. If you haven't read the original Go Giver book, I suggest you get it and read it right away. He's been on several lists as one of business's most influential leaders and one of the world's most influential authors. It is my honor, my absolute pleasure to bring Bob Burg on the show this week. Bob, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Great to be with you.
Now, I first got introduced to your work a long time ago, and that's when endless referrals made a big splash in the financial services industry. So I imagine a lot of the audience or the majority of financial advisors who are listening to this will recognize your name from endless referrals. How did you get started helping financial advisors get more referrals?
Well, actually, working with financial advisors began after the book came out because it ended up going through a lot of the different companies and firms and so forth. And I started getting invited to speak. So that really happened in sort of in backwards order.
Now, one of the things that I really liked about the Go Giver was that I read it after reading Endless Referrals again, and everything from Endless Referrals just clicked for me. So financial advisors, if you haven't gotten Endless Referrals, please make sure you get that as well. Read that in conjunction with the Go Giver because you'll see a lot of things that you won't see by reading just one or the other. You'll see a lot of things in the Go Giver that you wouldn't see. You'll see a lot of things in Endless Referrals that you wouldn't see because they're so closely related. But Bob, for the people who may not be familiar or may not know, what is the overall message of being a Go Giver?
Yeah, it's a great question. The basic premise is very simple. It's just that shifting your focus, and this is what's so key, shifting your focus from getting to giving. And when we say giving in this context, we simply mean constantly and consistently providing immense value to others, understanding that doing so is not only a more pleasant way of conducting business, it's actually the most financially profitable way as well. Not for some way out there woo-woo kind of reason. It actually makes very logical and rational sense when you're that advisor who can take your focus off of yourself and instead place it on others. Really look toward how you can make their lives better, how you can help them, how you can solve their problems, how you can help them get what they're looking for. You become someone who they want to get to know. They like, they trust, they want to do business with, they want to refer and introduce to others.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And one of the biggest takeaways that I got from the book was this idea of truly, not just saying it just to say it, not in a semantics type of way. I mean, absolutely, truly providing value because financial advisors, you probably heard me talk about this. It makes my skin crawl when people say providing value is just like a catchphrase or just like you described, like a woo-woo, rah-rah type deal. But you explain it in a beautiful way where you're literally giving more or perceived value in such a way than what you receive in payment. And I was wondering if you could elaborate on that a little bit more for financial advisors.
Yeah, I think this is important to understand because it really can be confusing if if it's not something that a person's already familiar with. And so the law number one, the foundational principle of the book is the law of value, which says your true worth in the business sense, of course, your true worth is determined by how much more you give in value than you take in payment. Now, when you first hear that, it sounds very counterintuitive, right? What? Give more in value than I take in payment? I mean, how am I supposed to survive in my business, never mind thrive? Kind of sounds like a recipe for bankruptcy. Give more in value than I take in payment. And so to understand this, we simply need to understand the difference between price and value. price, and of course, in the vernacular of a financial advisor, it would be fee. But just keeping it in the original, price is a dollar figure. It's a dollar amount. It's finite. Simply is what it is. Value, on the other hand, is the relative worth or desirability of a thing, of something, to the end user or beholder. In other words, what is it about this thing, this product, service, concept, idea, investment plan that brings so much worth or value to another person, to the other person, that they will willingly exchange their money for it and be glad they did, while you make a very healthy profit. A very basic example in terms of a financial advisor is that if you help someone invest with you, and let's say you're helping them to create a very sound and lucrative financial future, you're helping them plan to have a retirement where they're not worried about paying the bills. You're helping them to leave a legacy, whether it's to a charity or their children or both. You're ensuring that what they do now is going to have a big payoff for them years from now. When you do this, you're providing them with a significant amount more value than what you're taking in payment in terms of fee, yet you're also making a very, very healthy profit, which you should. But the reason this occurs is because your focus is not on your fee. Your focus is on making their life better. Your focus is on pleasing them. Your focus is on the value you're providing them. This is why John David Mann, my awesome co-author of the Go-Giver series, we say that money is simply an echo of value. It's the thunder, if you will, to value's lightning, which means nothing more than that the focus is on the value you're providing the other person. The value comes first. The money you receive is simply a very natural result of the value you've provided.
I could not have said it any better. And I'm reminded of the Warren Buffett quote. I think it's price is what you pay, value is what you get. And that's extremely true. I mean, I've had Kindle books that I've gotten for 99 cents that have just transformed my thinking, transformed my life. Right. And it all comes back to I paid a certain price, but I got a certain value that was disproportionate, if you will, to what I paid. And sure. In addition to value, one of the things that you talk about in the Go-Giver is the law of compensation. And it's all about, or at least I gathered that it's about how many people you serve and how well you serve them. And as a financial advisor, you can't just, well, I guess you could serve one or two people really, 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 really well. But if you want to build a big business, and I'm sure Bob would agree that you've got to serve a lot of people and you've got to serve them well. Do you have any other pointers or any other pieces of advice for the law of compensation?
Yeah, for your business to be sustainable and not subject to the whims of one or two people, then I'd say it's best to serve a whole lot of people. Of course, it might be within a certain niche of where you're working, but you want to serve enough people so that you're combining the exceptional value you provide with the reach, with the number of lives you impact with that value.
Exactly. And I think that one of the best things that financial advisors can do is to really focus on all three: increasing the value they provide, increasing the number of people that they serve, and increasing the quantity of which they serve them. And that's described in the book. And one of the themes of the book is mentorship. So for financial advisors who are listening, what is your take on finding a mentor? Or what are some things that an up-and-comer should not do when trying to find one?
Well, I think finding a mentor is a great thing. Having a mentor can be terrific because the right mentor can help you shave years off your learning curve. I think that many people approach a potential mentor in a way that is rather counterproductive. They'll find someone who they really admire, and they'll reach out to that person and just say something like, "Hey, would you be my mentor?" And typically that's not a productive way to go about it, because first, if he or she is someone you'd like as a mentor, there are probably many others who'd like them as a mentor who are all asking that same way: would you be my mentor? So there's nothing that distinguishes you. It can also come across a little bit entitled, as though they owe you to help you. And when you just, approach someone, will you be my mentor? It's sort of like, asking someone with who, and I'm talking about someone you don't already have a relationship with. It's sort of like saying to someone, hey, would you share 40 years of your experience, your wisdom with me, even though we don't know each other from a hole in the wall? So I think it's understanding first that a mentor-protege relationship is just that. It's a relationship, and it develops over time. With that said, you can certainly approach pretty much anyone and, and simply say something along the lines of, I know you're very busy, and if this is not something that you would, for any reason, choose to do, it's certainly very understandable. I'm wondering if I might ask you one or two very specific questions. When you do it this way, you greatly increase the odds that this person will take time to have that conversation with you. First, with several of these, several of the concepts, even within that sentence, beginning with the last part of it, when you say may I ask you one or two very specific questions? This way, that person knows you have an agenda and you already have planned out what you're going to ask them. So it's not as though the people who say, oh, can I pick your brain? And they don't know how much time that person's going to waste. And right. But you're saying one or two very specific questions. So they see you as a serious person. They see you as someone who is Now, the other thing that you did, though, in the way that you asked, which again sounds counterintuitive to a lot of people, but it works so well. And that is to say, I understand you're very busy. If this is not something you either have the time to do or would want to do for any reason, that's perfectly understandable, totally understandable. You've given them what I call the out or back door, which is basically an emotional escape route to be able to easily tell you no. Now, again, that's counterintuitive. Why would you want to make it easy for them to tell you no? Because first of all, they're going to say no if they want to say no. It's just a matter of whether they feel you're trying to guilt them into doing it or whether, you're respecting them. And so really what I call Burg's law of the out or back door is that the bigger the out or back door you give someone to take, the less they'll feel the need to take it. But the fact that you framed it as you did makes that person feel very comfortable with you. So again, they know there's no, attachment. There's no, emotional demand that you're making. You're very respectful. You're only going to ask them one or two very specific questions. You've created the environment where you've made it very easy for this person to say yes. So what you want to do is ask those questions. Make sure, of course, that you don't ask anything that you could have found the answer to by simply doing your research. Right?
Amen. I second that.
Do that, yeah. And then, and at the end of the conversation, you thank them, let them know how grateful you are. You look forward to immediately applying their wisdom, and you'll keep in touch and let them know how things are going. Fine. Now, what I would do right after that is send them a personalized, handwritten note of thanks. Not an email and not a text, a handwritten thank you note. It says something very simple like, dear Mr. Johnson, dear Ms. Smith, or their first name, however the relationship's been established. Thank you so much again for taking time out of your busy day to counsel me. I so appreciate it. Your wisdom is invaluable, and I look forward to applying it right away. We'll keep you updated. Best regards, sign your name. Put it in the regular envelope, hand address it, and hand stamp it. No meter machine. Put a regular stamp on it. Send it out that day. Now, another nice touch, and that is to make a small donation. It doesn't have to be big, just a small donation to their favorite charity, which again, you can discover by researching it online. If you have to, you can call their administrative assistant, but I'm sure there's something online about this person and their charity or favorite cause. Make a small donation in their name. They'll be notified of this. Now, you're not doing it to kiss up or anything. You're doing it simply to once again communicate that you respect the process, that you're filled with gratitude, and that you take this seriously, and you want to make sure to communicate that they understand your desire is to in some way add value to them.
Yeah, I think that's some of the best advice that this podcast has ever had.
Hey, financial advisors. If you're looking for a way to set more appointments with qualified prospects, I invite you to sign up for James's brand new webinar about how financial advisors can get more clients with email marketing. Go to theadvisorcoach.com/webinar to register today. On this webinar, you'll discover why email marketing is able to generate upwards of 4,400% ROI for smart financial advisors, 3 fatal mistakes nearly all financial advisors make with their emails, and the proven 3-step process for converting prospects into booked appointments using email. All you have to do is head on over to theadvisorcoach.com/webinar and register today.
I do want to mention, both for you and for the listeners, I get about 20 to 50 different advisors every single day asking questions. A lot of them are exactly what you said, where they could have been answered with a simple Google search. Or, they say, hey, I love your blog, I read it all the time. And then they proceed to ask a question that is answered in the very first blog article on the list. But what I found amazing, and maybe you can relate, is that there are some people who ask yes or no questions, and they're very short. They're like, would you do this? All I do is respond yes or no. And I'm not being cold, I'm not being curt, but that little piece of insight is tremendously valuable to them. And that's just a way of providing value. It doesn't really cost me much. I just shoot off the word yes or the word no, and they get something from it. It's not intrusive. It's not pick my brain. It's very easy. And the advice you give about the handwritten notes, I've gotten one, and that was from an inner circle member of mine. But over the years, I'm talking 5 years. I mean, we started off like 1 or 2 a day, and then now like 20 to 50 a day. Over 5 years, I have literally never gotten a handwritten note from financial advisors just like cold outreach from them asking a question and me answering. Never. But I have gotten several charitable donations, and I appreciate that quite a bit. I support donorschoose.org. So I think that's amazing advice.
And by the way, can I add one thing?
Sure.
You can then follow up with that person 3 weeks later or a month later, and you might have another question, or you're letting them know what's going on. You're keeping them up to date. And over time, if a mentor-protege relationship is supposed to develop, because that's what it is, it's a relationship, it happens over time, then it will. If not, it won't. So you don't want to be too attached to any one person having to be your mentor. It might be that there's going to be a series of people who you meet with once or twice, and you really gain some great knowledge, and then you might meet that person who's going to be your long-term mentor, or it might never happen. But again, it's in the way you have it progress that creates that environment where it's much more likely to happen.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think that some people reach out and they try to get a mentor, and they're like, hey, you're supposed to be the go-giver. You're supposed to just give me everything and give me all of your advice and give me all of your time and wipe out the calendar. But it doesn't really work that way. And you've explained it well. But are there any like misconceptions about being a go-giver? I mean, the name itself almost implies, for people who don't know, that you're just giving constantly. I mean, can't you be taken advantage of that way?
Well, you could be, if anything, but being a go-giver, first of all, should never be confused with being a doormat, or being a martyr, or being self-sacrificial, or being taken advantage of. If you're finding yourself as a pattern being taken advantage of, again, it's going to happen to everyone in life sometimes, because we're human beings and that's just what happens. But I'm talking about a pattern of this happening.
Sure.
If you're finding that happening with you, it's not because you're a go-giver, it's not because you're a good person, or it's because you're doing things in such a way that allow you to be taken advantage of. So no, we need to be able to set limits, but we do so in a way that's kind and respectful and so forth. I think the thoughts, the misconceptions, if you will, that people have about being a go-giver is probably before they read the book. Because as you said, it sounds like one of those things, the go-giver, you're giving yourself away. You're not making a profit. Well, go-givers tend to be the most profitable, because a go-giver, when they sell, they're selling on value. They're not selling on price, right? If you sell on low price, you're a commodity. If you sell on high value, you're much more likely to be looked at as a trusted resource. So when someone sells the Go Giveaway, they're probably at the higher end of the price scale. Although, like you said, some people might think, well, a Go Giver means you have to say yes to everything. Absolutely not. As a Go Giver, when you do business this way, you tend to be very, very successful. And, we all have a limited amount of time, right? We make the time to do the things that we need to do, but that's still limited in whatever way you cut it. And you couldn't possibly say yes to everything and everybody. You wouldn't be able to serve the people you're supposed to be serving and taking care of yourself. So, no, we have to say no much more than we say yes. But we do it in a way that honors the other person and is kind and respectful.
Yeah, and I appreciate that you keep mentioning that the Go Giver way is often the most profitable way, or the at least more profitable way to do business. And I can identify with that, because I would rather give someone $10,000 and have them produce $20,000 of value for me in my life than to just price shop everywhere and pay $5,000 and have that person only produce $7,500. And I mean, that makes mathematical sense.
Sure.
A lot of people will continue to shop around and say, I can't put out $10,000. I only have to put out $5,000. It's a cheaper price, but they're not looking at the big picture. So I love how you explain that.
Yeah, well, there are two things about that. One is that not everybody's your customer or client. You're looking for the ones who are looking more for quality and high value than to just low price. The other, though, is knowing how to communicate value in such a way that the other person understands it to be of value. Because sometimes the person who says they're just looking for low price, that's only because they don't understand the value. And if they did, they would pay the higher price. And so there are two kind of aspects of that. But sure, basically, you're looking to attract into your world the people who are much more likely to respect the way you do business.
Now, do you have any pointers for financial advisors on how they can demonstrate their value? Because a lot of them struggle with that. That's a common question I personally get. They really struggle with letting prospects know the value above and beyond the 1% a year or the couple $100 for the plan. How can they do that?
It's important to do that because while just by the very nature of what you do as a financial advisor, you do give your clients much more in value than what you receive in payment, so does every other advisor, basically. It's a commodity that you're dealing with. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just what it is. So while you may even do things better, my financial advisor, he's a guy who I wouldn't trade him out for the world. This guy takes great care of me. He goes above and beyond. He cares. I've referred him to all of my family members. He's done very well by us, but we've done very well by him because of his caring attitude. He's very knowledgeable, very competent, and the guy really works hard for us. Okay, we love him. Now, that's fine, but until that other person knows this about you, they don't know it about you. And if a prospective client cannot distinguish between, and this is why, by the way, referrals are so important, referrals and introductions. But that aside, before a prospective client, until they understand the difference, they don't know the difference. And if they don't, it's always going to come down to who has the lowest fee. And, again, unless your last name is Walmart or Amazon.com, low fee is not a good way to do business. It's not profitable. It's not productive, and it's certainly not sustainable. So how do you distinguish yourself and communicate that value? Well, it starts with you being that value, because they're going to buy you before they buy your company and before they buy your products. Okay? And then, so the question becomes, all right, how do I communicate this additional value, what we call extrinsic value over and above what the product is designed to do, which really has everything to do with the experience, right? And there are dozens, if not hundreds of ways to communicate that additional value, but they tend to come down to 5, what we call elements of value. And those elements are excellence, consistency, attention, empathy, and appreciation. And to the degree that you can communicate one or more, hopefully all 5 of those elements of value at every single touch point, whether, from when you first meet them, whether it's an outbound call or an inbound contact, or or you've met them at at a local charity event or your kid's ball game or wherever you happen to be. From that first moment through the relationship building process, through the follow-up and follow-through, through the sales process, through the referrals, to the degree that you communicate those elements of value, that is the degree that you take your competition and fee out of the picture.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I don't want to give away too much from the book or reveal the information that's inside too much. But to kind of wrap up the interview, I want to touch on the law receptivity, where you're being receptive to receiving. I mean, if you're being a go-giver, if you want to increase your worth and make more money and impact more people and touch more lives, you've also got to be open to receiving. So what are some ways that people can be open to receiving and to receive more? I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah, well, the law of receptivity, and this is really what brings it home, is that the key to effective giving is to stay open to receiving. And this really means nothing more than the fact that we breathe out, but we also breathe in, right? It's not one or the other. We breathe out carbon dioxide, but in order to survive and to thrive, we also need to breathe in oxygen. We breathe out, which is giving, but we also breathe in, which is receiving. Giving and receiving, despite the messages we hear from the world around us, whether it's media or school or community or whatever, where so many of the messages that we get about money and about prosperity and about abundance is rich people are evil, or if you make a lot of money, you did it on the backs of others, or you took advantage of it. And while there are certainly people out there who do that, by and large, that's not typically the story, especially to the degree that we operate in a free market environment where no one is forced to do business with us. The only way that you as an advisor can make a real lot of money is to provide exceptional value to a whole lot of people. And when you do that, you understand that giving and receiving are not opposite concepts. Giving and receiving are simply two sides of the very same coin, and they work in tandem. The key is not, whether you're a giver or a receiver. That's the treacherous dichotomy, the false dilemma, right? The unnecessary use of the word or, giver or receiver. No, you're a giver and a receiver. But you know that the focus needs to be on the giving of value to those whose lives you touch. You focus on the giving, but then you allow the receiving. And when you do, the world opens up to you. You live in abundance. You live, with abundance in everything, including financially.
Absolutely. And I think the biggest takeaway is the fact that we do live in a free market economy where our entire world, our entire economy itself is based on value exchange. We're exchanging value constantly, and businesses do that, individuals do that. They're continually making the world a better place. And one of my personal mentors from many years ago, he had a saying that he liked to say a lot. It was, there is no giving back, there's only giving. And that changed my worldview more than all the other little quotables and little Instagram posts that people put out there. And it really clicked for me. And reading The Go-Giver, it reinforced it even more, that there's only giving, and you are rewarded and you receive to the extent that you give to the world.
Wonderful.
So thank you very much for doing this interview. It's been an absolute pleasure. I hope financial advisors got a lot from it. I hope that they go back and take some notes. But if there are advisors who want to get more involved in your world, what do you suggest they do, or how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, probably the best thing is to go to Burg, BURG.com. And while they're there, they can, if they'd like to check out the books, they can get a free chapter of each one so that you can see if you like it, and then click through if you do. Also on the blog, burg.com/blog, I ran a series of I think it was 22 brief videos called Endless Referrals, the Go-Giver Way. So the last one is actually at the top. So scroll down to the beginning of the series, and I actually take you through some of the Endless Referral system in a series of tips.
I actually watched those. I know exactly what you're talking about, and I like them. So thank you for putting those out there. Once again, thank you for doing the show. And thank you for being such a giver. Financial advisors, I will catch you next week.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.